Black American culture runs so much, right? When we look at like music and fashion and all of these things. And so much of that started here in Chicago. And we just don't always get that credit that other cities might get.
What's good? I'm Nikesha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. Today's guest is Arionne Nettles, author of the book, We Are the Culture, Black Chicago's Influence on Everything. The book is as much a love letter to our city as it is putting the world on notice that Chicago is the epicenter for all things culture and cool, with receipts.
I was talking a lot about Black stories. And so to tell these stories, we have to deal with a lot of adversity. And maybe that is not my goal. Like, not saying I can't mention those challenges, but maybe I don't want to give those challenges that much room to breathe. Like, maybe what I want the balance to be is that I'm putting more balance on the triumphs.
From Johnson Publishing Company and Soft Sheen and Dudley's hair care products to the legacy of the Chicago Defender and today's emphasis on drill music in the hip-hop scene, Arionne covers it all. Why she says writing this book was really about asking questions people had been waiting to answer all their lives. Plus, how she balanced Chicago's media reputation with the reality of the home she knows and loves. And the story she had to leave on the cutting room floor. Take a tour of the Second City through Arionne's eyes next, when Black and Published continues. So we're going to jump and get all into it. So,
okay.
My first question for you today, when did you know that you were a writer?
I think I knew that I was a writer when I was in elementary school, because I don't think that I ever thought that I would write a book, but I used to write like poetry and stuff like that. You know, in Chicago, how we have like those young author contests and stuff like that. I always thought that was so fun and cool. And so I always felt like, well, I can write, right? But it always felt like something fun. I never really thought of it as a professional job, though. So I think I always did see myself as a writer, but not like a professional writer when I think about it.
So for listeners who don't know, me and Arionne go back to middle school, like 7th to 8th grade at Morgan Park. Yes. So I know a little bit more than maybe most.
Mm-hmm.
And so writing wasn't what you pursued at first.
No.
At all.
No, not at all. I went to business school for college, and I just was like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And I didn't really know, but I was like, okay, well, I knew that I didn't want to not be able to take care of myself. And so for that, I figured, okay, well, money, right? Like, we learn really early on, especially if you didn't grow up like super wealthy, right? That you go to college in order to be able to get a good job and take care of yourself. So I figured, okay, well, if I do business, then I'll know how to make money. I'll be well off. Like, I'll be able to take care of myself. I won't have to be like a burden, or I won't be like stressed out. I mean, I'm still stressed out about money, but I didn't think that I would, I thought it would be a good pathway to be able to take good care of myself. And I think that was why I chose it. I didn't really have a passion for anything that I saw. And I was just kind of like, well, I don't really know what I want to be. And so it was kind of scary, because you know how people will be like, I want to do this. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. Like, I didn't really have any of those ideas going into college. So I just chose something that felt practical.
I remember you doing business, and then you're doing a lot of different things. But I remember you made the switch to journalism and went to Northwestern to get your master's in journalism. What was that transition like, and what did that do for you in terms of re-exploring who you were as a child and being a writer?
Yeah, I really love that question, because I think I was so much older at that point. So I had been writing before I went back to school. So I kind of knew where my weak points were and where, like, I was like, okay, I don't really know journalism structure. I don't really know certain things. People would say, oh, you have like a natural thing for writing, but I don't really know the difference between writing and journalism writing, right? And because I've never been taught those things. And you can be a really strong academic writer and not necessarily be great in journalism. And I think it really taught me, even when I'm not doing journalism specifically, like journalism writing, to really know how to tease out the important parts of a story. Like, what's most important? How can I highlight those things? How to write concisely, how not to waste time on details that don't matter. And so when you see me add details, it's because they're important. So it just taught me a lot of that. Like, I don't waste words, I don't waste space. Um, and that's all because of journalism training for sure.
Come on with the tactics, okay? So then having that training and then also having the natural gift of storytelling, why was telling the stories of Black Chicago specifically always something that you were drawn to? Because this is work that you started doing on the radio.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was because a lot of times it felt like it would just be unknown and left out in a way that it shouldn't be. So many of these Black stories are the backbone of what makes Chicago Chicago. And then I would realize that, oh, these stories are not just what makes Chicago Chicago. They are what make certain industries what they are. And so I realized, like, oh, not only do some of us not know these stories, but people around the country and sometimes around the world need to know these stories too, right? Because there's this great influence, right? We know Black American culture runs so much, right? When we look at like music and fashion and all of these things. And so much of that started here in Chicago. And we just don't always get that credit that other cities might get.
So then this being a passion project and something that you were doing on the radio at WBEZ and telling these stories, when did you know that that wasn't enough and that it needed to be a book?
I decided that I did want to try to write a book. I think because I started working in academia. And when you start working in academia, everybody's asking you, well, what's your book going to be? What's your scholarship?
Mm.
Because even though as journalists we publish all the time, like that's not seen as scholarship. It has to be like a book or it has to be a peer-reviewed journal. Like these are the things that are viewed as like career making things. So mentors will ask you, what are you working on in a way to help you? And one thing that I always wanted to do was I didn't necessarily want my first book, especially, to be something that I was disconnected from. I wanted it to be something that, yes, I study it and I'm a scholar of it, but I'm also a part of it. Like, I wanted it to be something that I am familiar with. I'm not an outsider. And so, thinking through that, like, it just felt like the best fit, something that I was very familiar with, like, not just as a Black Chicagoan, but also as a reporter and a journalist.
So once you had the idea and were ready to like really put it down, what was your publication process like?
Okay. So once I had the idea, I had a draft. My first draft was really bad. I kind of was all over the place. I didn't really know what I was doing. I think I also underestimated it. I kept thinking, well, I'm a journalist. I know how to write articles, right? If every chapter is like an article and I have to write how many of these, okay, fine, whatever. I can do that. Um, and I just got really overwhelmed. But I had a really great editor. She gave me fantastic edits. She helped me kind of just rethink some things. And it's also hard because, like, as a journalist, you don't always have the exact same tone with every article you write. But in a book, you do need the exact same tone so that it feels the same. And so some days when I was writing something, I would sound one way, and then maybe sometimes I wouldn't. So it was also just trying to like spread it out and even it out. I could also tell when I was writing something, I was tired versus when I was really excited about something. So there were just some real differences. in the whole book being the same, and having an editor that you trust and that can really get you is just really important. So we did that. I worked on edits, and then we did like another round of really big edits too. And then there was just so many rounds of copy edits. I can't even remember because it was copy edits and then like, a round that was just looking at like line breaks. And there's just so many edits. But I think those first couple big edits are the ones that I remember as being just really helping me figure it out and make it feel like a book instead of just a bunch of pieces of things, making it feel like it's one cohesive piece.
Hmm. I've never heard someone say that their tone changes depending on whether, they're tired or not. Can you talk about what that looked like for you in this book? Like how your own mood affected your writing?
Yeah, yeah. So let's say there was like a topic that I knew a whole lot about and I was excited, right? It might be a little bit longer, it might have even a little bit more detail. You can kind of tell in my writing that I'm really excited about this. And then let's say I get to another topic, and maybe, I mean, I chose the topic, so it's not like they are topics that I didn't want to write about, but like maybe I'm tired this week. I'm like really tired. I'm not adding as much detail. It feels like I'm just going through the motions. And
Mm.
so my editor's like, well, what about this? What about this? You didn't really say. Or sometimes, especially because I was talking a lot about Black stories. And so to tell these stories, we have to deal with a lot of adversity. And so there would be certain sections, and she's like, you sound really angry here.
Mm.
And she's like, I'm not saying that you can't be angry, but I think that what you're saying in this book is that you are celebrating that Black people did these great things despite of those
Hmm.
challenges. I'm like, yeah, yeah, no, that is my tone. That's what I'm trying to do. And she's like, okay, well, you might want to revisit this part because you sound real mad, you know? And so, and it could be I done had a long day, and I'm like, and then they did so and so and so, right? I'm pissed off. I'm like going into like investigative journalist mode, and I'm like, laying out the facts. And so, and maybe that is not my goal. Like, not saying I can't mention those challenges, but maybe I don't want to give those challenges that much room to breathe. Like, maybe what I
Mm.
want the balance to be is that I'm putting more balance on the triumphs of it. And so that part was just so much harder than I just didn't really think about that.
I love that, not giving the challenges the room to breathe, because the book is joyful and it sounds like you. And I don't know if I've ever seen you angry, but I know that we've gone years without seeing each other. But it's like, I like just from knowing you from school, it's just like, I don't ever remember you without a smile or without having that joy. And so that really comes through in the writing, and that your editor could pick up on that and notice that these sections that are more challenging
Hmm.
read as such and don't have that joy that I think that you would be known for is like a really key edit, because it sounds like you.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if, as an editor, if I would have picked that up,
Mm.
like, because as a journalism editor, I'm just picking up, like, are these facts true? But she was like, yeah, you just sound real angry. And I don't think that that's what you want this book to be.
So then, knowing that this book wasn't going to count for a tenure track, but was
Hmm.
still going to be a notch for you as both a journalist, but also as an academic and pursuing that career wise, what does it mean to have it out?
The thing is that that might have been the first reason why I wanted to do a book. But now it just really doesn't matter. Like, the career part doesn't really matter. Like, I think if anything, I feel really grateful that I think it's opened me up to so many more conversations with people. Like, I have met so many people who have said, hey, I see what you're interested in. Like, we have this organization and we're doing XYZ. Or would you be open to working with us to do whatever, whatever? I've thought a lot about this in my past year. It was like, oh man, like, I love this place. What do I want my community work to look like? Like, what organizations do I want to be a part of? And like, I want to be more involved in certain ways. And so people have like found me through the book. And so, yes, the original thought to do a book was like, I want to do a book. I want to establish myself as an expert on something. But since then, I think I've just really been like, as long as my community likes it, like I kind of don't care. Like people have been
Mm,
like, hey, are you going to do like a tour? And I'm like, there's no need to do a tour because I don't care what people outside of Chicago think about the book. Like, not that I am grateful when people outside of Chicago read it and find connection. I think that that's beautiful. And I say that because like I read books about stuff. Like let's for example, I can read a book about Southern hip hop and love it. I can read a book about New York hip hop and love it, right? And I'm not from either of those places. So, yes, I think that we can connect and find joy in other stories. But if people are like, I'm not really interested in seeing how Black Chicago influenced stuff, I'm okay with that because people here are interested.
right.
And so that has just meant so much to me, like the love and support I've gotten here. It's really been like a door opener for more connection.
It sounds like the book was freeing for you.
Yeah, it really was. And I didn't expect that.
That's what's up. So, can you read something from We Are the Culture so that we can get into this book?
Yes.
We Are the Culture, Black Chicago's Influence on Everything, is an anthology collection of how Black Chicagoans contributed to the culture writ large. From the ways the Great Migration shaped the city into what it is, and how those throngs of people seeking the warmth of other suns created blues, revolutionized jazz, and went on to create national publications documenting Black life, Arionne Nettles' book picks up where the Defender, Ebony, and Jet left off, focusing on Chicago's global impact in music, beauty and fashion, sports, and much, much more. Here's Arionne.
Okay, I'll read from the introduction. From Chicago with Love, written while listening to Sunday Candy by Donnie Trumpet and the Social Experiment. I am from the South Side of Chicago. That tells you as much about me as you need to know. Michelle Obama in the documentary Becoming. The first thing I ever learned, as far as identity, was twofold. I knew I was Black, and I knew I was from Chicago. And frankly, those were the only two things that mattered to me. That's because Chicago is more than just a place where I grew up. It's the place that is an integral part of me. I grew up playing in the streets and alleys, roller skating and biking, even over broken concrete throughout my South Side block, where my family had lived for 3 generations. Everything about this neighborhood, to me, has translated to love, strength, and street savviness. I went to Chicago public schools, molded by teachers who, along with my family, intentionally instilled a sense of Black pride into me, letting me know that I came from a long line of amazingly smart and creative Black people, and that so many of those Black people had spent time here in this beautiful city where they created community and cultivated each other's talents. And I was a city kid, going to city parks after school, spending hours and hours in city libraries, entering city oratory and poetry contests, participating in art fests. So it was not lost on me how Chicago itself is and always has been an epicenter of culture, and how Black Chicagoans have been contributors to that culture. Chicago is in my DNA, and when a city is part of your identity, it means something different. It means you're very much invested in that city's story, how it's told, and who's doing the telling. And when it comes to what makes Chicago, Chicago, I've never felt that story was shared enough here, let alone with the rest of the world.
Thank you. So, one time I remember maybe a year or so ago, I was home and my brother's girlfriend and I took my nephew, my kids, her kids to the park downtown in Mackie Daly Park. And we drove and we parked downtown. We had a day at the park. And then we were driving back home. And for some reason, Lakeshore Drive, how to get on it from Lower Wacker Drive was closed. So we had to
Uh-huh.
go around. And so we had to go around through toward the north side, like through Chicago Avenue, and then come back south that way.
Okay.
And what I noticed as I was driving, and it really made me sad, was because Chicago is segregated still, and the way the
Mhm.
city is divided, downtown, the North and South Loop, the Gold Coast, the North Side, it's one of the prettiest cities you'll ever see in life. I stand on that 10 toes down. But
Mhm.
then as we were
Mhm.
driving south, I began to get so sad because then I see all the demolition from the Robert Taylor homes or all of the projects that have come down. And then the graffiti starts to pick up and the neighborhoods change. And then, you go from seeing
Yeah.
these broad avenues and these lights and all of these different things to seeing, the hood basically. And it
Mhm.
really made me sad. And what I love about your book is that it is centered on the South Side, a lot of it. It is centered on Black Chicago. And so it was reason to have joy about this side of the city that has been neglected at times
Mhm.
and also is still really resilient. And given all the stories that are told about Chicago when they do hit mainstream news, them being so negative and always about the crime, your book did
Yeah.
the exact opposite. So, can you lean more into talking about finding the joy in these stories of the Black community of Chicago that are far more important than just the negative ones that we see in a nightly news ticker?
So often, a lot of the people who are telling those stories are not from here, right? Like, we know by being in the news that, national news media, and they cannot be as specific as, like, local media. That's why local media is also so important because the loss of local media in any city is detrimental because those are the people who cover like the little league games and the park openings and, the galleries and like the smaller things that mean a lot to a community. National news, of course, can never do that. It can never show those unique parts of a city or a side of a city. That's not their goal anyways, right? They're kind of looking at national trends, bigger ideas. And we also have like big national politicians and leaders who like to malign Chicago in such a way that people who've never been here often say like, "Ooh, you're from Chicago. Oh my goodness," And growing up in Chicago, regardless of what has ever happened, I never felt that. Like I never felt growing up in Chicago that I was at a loss of anything. I never felt that I was denied anything. I felt like the city was that I had all these things for me, right? And I think we forget, especially being in a city like Chicago, where we do, like, of course, there's a lot of things that we need to work on. And we should critique our own city and like fight for better always. But we, being in like this kind of like global city, we have all these things like parks and some of the biggest and best libraries and archives. And we have all of these things at our fingertips just on the South Side. Like I literally live like less than a mile away from a national monument over in Pullman. So like I can take my son and we'll ride our bike over there. And so we have all of these gems and all of this history and beautiful things that are just so close to us. All this culture surrounds us and you grow up with it. Like I was talking to somebody who was like, yeah, Gwendolyn Brooks just came to my school. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I think Gwendolyn Brooks might have came to my school too. Right. And so you just have all these experiences with these amazing people because they live here and
Mm-hmm.
they grew up here or they spent so much time here. And it's really hard to see your city as this horrible place if you associate it with all this greatness.
Exactly. And so from music, fashion, Black news and media, sports, all of those different things have their global origination points in the city of
Mhm.
Chicago.
Mhm.
What were some of the most fascinating parts of that story for you to uncover?
The most fascinating parts were like a lot of the details of like how much that reach was. Because, like, for example, I knew growing up that Johnson Publishing Company was in Chicago, right? I don't think I realized that like Johnson Publishing Company, because I was so young, I didn't realize that they were like covering international Black news. I didn't realize that they had people stationed over in different parts of Africa. I didn't realize all of that, right? And I should have, I guess, because like even when we think about like hair care, my aunt worked for Soft Sheen, which was based in Chicago, and that's how she ended up moving to South Africa because they were doing hair care activations and different work over in South Africa specifically. And she ended up being like over their international partners. And so, like, these companies started in Chicago, right? But they have like these wide global reaches. You just don't think about that. And so it's all these people having these really wide reaching things, but they didn't have social media to post like, hey y'all, I'm back in South Africa working for South Chic. Come get at me if you in Joburg, right? Like, so they have all these like stories that like until you talk to them, it's like, wow, what? You did what?
And I think what's so funny about that, because I loved everything about the book, but even like the stories about like the fashion, like I think everybody knew Ebony Fashion Fair, but I think it was like the stories about the hair care because we lived by Luster's Pink Oil Moisturizing Lotion in high school.
Yes.
Like
Yes. Yes.
every girl had a bottle in their locker,
Everybody.
and like we lived by it. But like I don't even think I knew that was a Chicago product as much as I knew that Dudley's was with the Dudley
Mm-hmm.
Blue Grease,
Mm-hmm.
which also
Yeah.
you got your hair pressed with a bottle of Blue Grease from Dudley's. It was just that's the way it
Yeah.
happened. But I think you talking about that is that so many of these stories that you uncovered and that you're telling the history of have gone untold. And I think for some reason, I don't know if it's just Black Chicago or Black people in general, that if we don't ask the questions, the stories don't get told because I guess they're written off as inconsequential or just a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find that in doing the research for this book and uncovering and telling these stories?
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's just so much where people, like, you would talk to people and they're like, well, nobody ever asked me. Like, people are ready to tell you. You just have to find them. So, like, I was talking with, Charlotte Draper, and she was one of Ebony's food editors. And she was one of the well, actually, she was the first person to cook in their test kitchen when they opened up their new building, right? And the way she would talk, she's like, yeah, so people would send in recipes. And she's like, well, before we put a recipe in the magazine, I cooked the recipe to make sure, right? And then so people would just walk past. So, like, let's say you're a celebrity and you're just walking past the test kitchen and you're like, let me try these greens. Let me have a little bit of this chocolate cake. Like, it's just wild to envision, right? But this was just people's everyday lives.
Absolutely. And also part of the everyday lives is where you talk about the things I think that we held on close to as children. I'm specifically thinking about the rank and the route and the culture of
Mm-hmm.
roller
Mm-hmm.
skating and then or
Yeah.
not roller skating on Friday and Saturday
Yeah.
nights.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the importance of the music. You talk about house music and
Mm-hmm.
footworking, which I love. Why were some of these, parts of the culture that don't get a lot of mainstream play outside of Chicago? I mean, they do now, thanks to social
Mm-hmm.
media. Like I'm thinking about the Footwork Kings, especially.
Yeah.
But like a lot of that, I don't even think with the artists that we've had coming out of the city, have people really been checking for Chicago like that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think because it's just kind of like people don't really know it's like those are stories where like we know because we grew up in that culture, but I think that it's not necessarily given its academic or scholarly grace. It's not seen as like as cultural.
Rigorous.
Yeah, it's not seen like, oh, this is a cultural like revolution as some of the older stuff. Which is also because probably at the time those things weren't either, right? Like when you look at like the blues at the time, The blues was seen as like, oh, it's just some stuff that the young people are doing, right? And so I think it was also important for me to also start to talk about stuff that was not as old, because I think that that is just also as important. And I think that we have a tendency, and when I say we, I mean society, to trivialize the things that young Black people enjoy instead of explaining and showing how they are a marker of the times and how they are means of cultural expression. And we've seen
Mm.
that throughout history, right? And it's why things might not be seen as like, oh, this amazing thing until 30, 40, 50 years, until after the people have gone and they're no longer doing it. And now it's seen as something that only old people do.
So I feel like that's a comment on Chicago, but also a comment on Black culture at large.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas like the things that we create, whether it's the blues or drill music or, footworking or tap dance or whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm.
especially in culture,
Yeah.
it's often minimalized. And in this
Mm-hmm.
age of social media and algorithms and the behemoth that is coming, that is AI,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those contributions are intentionally suppressed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then, how much more difficult is it then for someone like you in your position to uncover those stories where, as soon as something Black and trendy starts, it's dismissed or the credit is given to someone else who is not Black?
Yeah. I do think it's helpful if you're there from the start, right? It is harder once more and more time passes, especially like you mentioned now, the world is different. So, talking about TikTok dances, for example, right? And I use that because there has been such a huge discussion around TikTok and Black TikTok creators getting credit for their original choreography. So, if you're not there from the beginning, if you go back 5 years, it's really hard to then remember, look, and see. So, like, for example, I cannot even remember the young lady's name, but I remember the controversy around, I think, was that the Renegade dance?
That's exactly who I
And
was thinking about when I asked
if,
this question.
yep. And if
Yes.
people did not do articles around that, if I go now and say, oh, I'm writing a book and I want to include it, and all I remember is that it was the Renegade dance, the only way for me to really remember and be able to give her proper credit will be to now reference the stories written about it. And so I needed someone to document that at that time because things just move so fast.
Her
Because it's been
name is,
several.
yeah, her name is Jalila Harmon,
Yes,
created
yes.
the
And
Renegade Dance.
yes. And so now we've had, more instances of that, but that was like the first major instance of things happening. And so if we didn't have journalists who cover trends and online behavior and digital media, I wouldn't be able to like go back and reference it. And, but because of that, I can go back, I can reference what they wrote, I can cite them properly, I can do all those things if I were to now write a book about it.
So then, with that being said about how difficult it may become to chronicle what's happening now, what was the most difficult or challenging part about writing this book and uncovering the stories of like those first Black newspapers, even before The Defender?
Yeah. So there were a lot of things I wanted to say and I couldn't answer in the editing process, especially, which is the beauty of it, right? Generally, if you're doing a newer story, your editor will say, well, who did this? What was this? Right. And then, you go back through what you might go back through your books, you might go back to the person you interviewed. And there were a lot of questions that my editor would have for me. And my answer to her would be, we just don't know. So there was a lot that I could not answer. And it's because I can't go back and Google renegade dance creator, Black girl, right? I just might know something really generic like the Chicago style jazz created is what most people did, like the Lindy Hop too. I believe that is true. That's as specific as I can get if I say a statement like that. I don't really know who. I don't really know the person. I can mention the jazz musicians who played from Chicago around that time, but I myself cannot say this particular person heard Chicago jazz and decided they wanted to start doing the Lindy Hop to it, right? Like I can't do that. So it's a lot that I just can't answer. And I have to make a lot of generalizations. And as journalists, we don't like to make assumptions. And so a lot of times I would either just not be able to answer it, or I would say, well, we don't know who did this, but we know that it made its way here by this time or something, you know? So ugh, I hate saying that, but a lot of times I'm just like, I don't know that. Or like me fact checking stuff in other books. And then I'm like, oh, this is not quite true. So like I was reading a book and it's like the one kind of definitive biography on Robert Abbott. And it was written by somebody who knew his family. And so it's pretty close, right? It was with interviews from people who knew him. So most of it is really accurate, right? But somewhere in the book, he mentions that like 32 papers or something in Chicago failed while Abbott was at the helm of the Defender. And so just doing spot checks of that fact, I found some of that to be untrue and misleading, right?
Mm.
So stuff like that would happen all the time. And I'm just like, ugh. So even books that I do trust, I have to fact check. Like you can't just
Take them at
put,
their word.
yeah. People make mistakes. It's kind of what, why we always tell students or young journalists, like, hey, try not to use secondary sources because other people make mistakes. And so you want your stuff to be as accurate as possible. And just knowing that when you put something in a book, people take that as fact. So I just wanted to be very careful. But that just it takes a really long time to write like that when you are triple checking every fact.
It does. But then it also seems like a lot of stuff got left on the cutting room floor. So is there something that you didn't include in the book that you wanted to?
There were a lot more things about music that I just couldn't include because that would have just been a whole thing about music. So like there's not technically like a section about jazz. I do talk about jazz, but I more so talk about jazz in other places throughout. And so there's just so many things I could have talked about in that. Dance, other type of dance, like Catherine Dunham. But you just get to a point and you're like, I have talked about so much. I don't think I have space for anything else. There's
Mm.
just so much more I could have written about. I didn't write about the Bears. And I think that especially like when you're talking about like the 85 Bears, I think they had a pretty influential part. And even though they weren't like, the whole team wasn't Black, I think that there were some Black players on there, especially that kind of made a pretty big indent in culture. So there's a lot that I could have done some more on. But I was just like, I got to be done at some point.
So is there a We Are the Culture part two, or is this enough for now?
I don't know. I don't know. I think this is enough for now, but I will never say never because I even know so much more than I knew, like industries and sub industries. And there's just so many more stories to tell.
So then what do you think is the defining aspect, if you can drill it down to one, of Black Chicago?
If I had to drill it down to just one thing, is that we find creativity in everything, right? In every crevice of the city, in every type of thing. We're always going to find opportunity. We're always going to find creativity. We're always going to make something be culturally fun and
Mm.
different and amazing, even if you don't necessarily think it is. We're always going to find something really cool. And I think that that should be respected.
Amen. So now I want to move to a speed round in the game before I let you go for the morning, afternoon. What is your favorite book?
Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston.
Who is your favorite author?
I guess I should then say Zora Neale Hurston.
You don't have to if it's somebody different.
No, because I think she wrote a lot of stuff where she would say one line and I'm like, I have to ponder on this one line for a month as if I never heard it. Like I'll reread a Zora Neale Hurston book and one line will just stop me in my tracks and I'm like, Oh, Sora. So, yeah, I think so.
We didn't talk about this in the interview, but I still want to know because Chicago is kind of known for like poetry and spoken word. What do you think if you think there is a difference between poetry and spoken word?
I don't think that there is a difference, but I think that spoken word is funnier to joke about in jokes and TV shows. Like, Raphael de la Ghetto on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like that's just funny. Like it's always gonna be funny. And I love poetry and spoken word, but that's still gonna be funny to me. Like I feel like that's not, or like when Common was on Girlfriends and he was
Yes.
telling all of his and Lynn's business.
Business, yes.
Yes, it's always gonna be good.
Who is your favorite artist?
I'm trying not to say Beyonce,
It's okay if you do.
but it is Beyonce. Like I'm just trying to think of somebody who's it's probably it's Beyonce. Um,
And that is
yeah,
okay.
it's Beyonce. And and I don't stand anybody, so I just try not to say it like that. Like it's not like just because it's Beyonce, but I think that like especially me and her are close enough in age where as she grows and she puts out more albums, like when she was a teen, I was a teen, and now she's older and doing these like more grown woman albums, and now I'm older and doing more growth. So the content matches my growth as an adult, and I think that that's honestly why it feels like a very natural progression.
That's real. What is your favorite Chicago-based movie or TV show?
Southside, the comedy show.
If money were no object, where would you go? What would you do? And where would you live?
If money was no object, I think I would actually live in Johannesburg in South Africa and I would write. And I think I would have a jet because since my son is special needs, like I don't think I could ever like live abroad because I don't think he could ever like I don't fly with him. So I don't ever want to move someplace I can't drive. But if money was no object, we could move to Johannesburg. We could fly on the private jet so he could be able to be comfortable. I wouldn't be bothering people. Like it would just be a like more pleasant experience. And I would just like write books.
I support this. Name 3 things on your bucket list.
One thing on my bucket list is to write a romance novel. Just because I read so much of them, I really want to write one. Um, Second thing on my bucket list is I want to have like a foundation. Like I want to have like it's not necessarily that I have so much money, but I want to be able to like maybe if even if I'm poor, like use other people's money to like just give it away to people who need it and be like, here's a scholarship for somebody who can't afford to go to college. Here's money for this struggling mom. Like I want to be able to like bless people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess the third thing would be I still want a hit podcast. I've never had like a hit podcast. Like I've done some podcast work and it's been fun, but I want something that's like a hit.
And pays the
And
bills. I get it.
or even if it doesn't pay a lot of the bills, like can it pay for itself?
That part.
Yeah, even if it could just pay for itself and I could have a little help, I think I'd be okay. Like, so that's my definition of hit. It's just it pay for itself.
That is also my definition of hit. And if anybody would like to sponsor Black and Published, I
See?
am open.
See? Y'all know who to call.
What brings you joy?
Being outside, being near water, and music and dancing.
And what brings you peace?
Dancing and community.
All right, so the game is called Rewriting the Classics. Classic is however you define it. Although I know you read some of the classics because we went to high school together. So name one book that you wish you would have written.
I would say Octavia Butler's Kindred.
Name a book where you want to change the ending and how would you do it?
Their eyes were watching God. I really want it different for Janie and Tea Cake.
Everybody wants different for Janie and TK. All right. And so name a book that you think is overrated or overtaught and why.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm trying to remember one that because I intentionally pushed them out of my head. Um, I feel like there's just a lot of the same Shakespearean things, and it's kind of like, can we switch it up? Because I also don't know why Romeo and Juliet is always one. Like, it can be others. Like, even if you want people to get into like that Shakespearean speak, I feel like there's other stories that could maybe have a cooler thing. But I get the whole thing about like you can watch the TV versions and read the book, and then like you can, like, if you're doing drama, you can act out the play. But I just feel like it's not as good because everybody knows what's going to happen before they read it. So I feel like it's a little played out, like a little. I think switching it up on the Shakespeare.
So Shakespeare is the answer.
Yeah.
So my final question for you today: when you're dead and gone and among the ancestors, what would you like someone to write about the legacy of words and work that you've left behind?
I want people to write that I loved people through what I wrote. I've actually thought about this a lot. Like, when I'm gone, what do I want my words to mean to people? And I want them to be an expression of my love.
Big thank you to Arionne Nettles for being here today on Black and Published. Make sure you check out Arionne's first book, We Are the Culture, Black Chicago's Influence on Everything. And if you're not following Arionne, check her out on the socials. She's at Arionne Nettles on Twitter and Instagram. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Arionne about why she wasn't worried about making her book acceptable for the Academy. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next year for Black and Published Season 5 in 2025. I'll be back with more books, more Blackness, and more of the journeys of the writers, poets, and playwrights we love. Talk to you then. Peace.